In this lesson, I'm going to be teaching you about website backups. When it comes to anything relating to do with a hack, having an up-to-date backup of your website is your number one tool to be able to fight against it. Now, there are a lot of ways that you could feasibly go about doing backups. You can do this manually, or you could also use some kind of automated solution. There are certainly plenty of WordPress plugins, for example, that will automate the backups for your website. However, you need to make sure that those backups are actually complete, that they're including all of the files and all of the database. If it is missing something, then when you go to try to restore your site, it's simply going to be missing those elements from it. The other thing is that you have to think about where those backups are going to be stored. If the plugin is storing the backups on your own website, it is possible that a hack could try to infect your backups, or that they could even just delete them so you don't have access to them anymore. So if you are getting some kind of automated backup, I highly recommend for you to use a solution that allows you to have it emailed to you. Now, the anti-hack plugin that I will be teaching you in a separate lesson in this series will actually go through that for you because it is capable of doing those things. With that said, this lesson is really more about manually creating a backup and also restoring a backup of your website. Now, a backup has two parts at least that you should be concerned with having a WordPress website. You have the actual files of a website, so that's part number one, and then part number two is the database. When you're in your control panel, if you access File Manager, you'll be able to get to the files, and if you access PHP Admin, you'll be able to get to the database. Now, there are certainly ways that you can do backups through Control Panel here with the backup or the backup wizard option. However, I'm really not a big fan of these, and on some hosting setups, they may not even work correctly for you, or they make you download an entire backup of your whole web hosting account and not just for each individual website. And sometimes you just can't restore the backups that are created through these options. So this is yet another reason why I like to just do this manually. So now for the File Manager right here, when you open this up, you're going to see folders over on the left, and you're going to see the files that are in whatever folder you are viewing on the right. Now, what is really important is this public HTML folder. Now, depending on what kind of a web host setup you're using, it's possible that this could slightly vary. Ultimately, when I say public HTML, I'm talking about the base directory that you have installed WordPress to for the given website that you are trying to back up. If you are on a web hosting account where this is the only domain name, then you have likely installed WordPress directly to the public HTML directory. However, if you're using a shared web hosting account where you have multiple domain names all put onto one account, then you likely have your public HTML directory, which is where your main domain name is installed, the original one you used for that hosting account. And then you have your add-on domains, and all those add-on domains will be located in folders inside of the public HTML directory. In a lot of cases, those folders are going to be named after whatever the website is. So you might see a folder like this one for another website that you have installed. So you need to get to the base directory of wherever you have installed WordPress. You can always tell if you're in the right place because you'll be seeing files like wplogin.php, wp-config, wp-cron, and you're also going to see these three folders: wp-admin, wp-content, wp-includes. So this is how you know you're in the right location. Now once you know you're in the right location, go up here and click up one level. Then you need to select that location that you were just in. So I was just in public HTML. So I'm going to select public HTML here, and then up here at the top I'm going to click on compress. Now I like to use this gzipped tar archive. This is something that is easily able to be restored directly inside of the file manager here. So you just click on the bubble here to select the type. If you need to change the name of it, if you want to perhaps date it, for example, you can change the name of this. Just don't change the ending part, the .tar.gz. If you wanted to add on a date to it, you could do something like April 23, 2016. So now when you're ready, you just click on Compress Files, and it's going to add everything within that public HTML directory or whatever directory you selected. It's going to add all of that stuff to that file right there. So this is your backup file for the whole website, at least for the files of your website. This can then be restored at any time by simply going up to Extract. You click on Extract and then Extract Files, and it'll extract everything to the same places. Now, keep in mind, if you are going to restore one of these file backups, think about what is already there on your website. For example, let's say I have a backup of the files on this website, and my website ends up getting hacked. So I then would want to be restoring all of these files. However, if my website is currently hacked, then there could be malicious files that are here in all of these files. So what I would really want to do is to delete my entire website, all of the files and all of the folders that are located within that base directory that you've installed everything to. Now the thing is, once you delete everything, you go up here and click on delete and confirm it, it's going to trash your whole website. So then your website is clean. You could then go back here once your public HTML directory or whatever directory your WordPress has been installed to, once that directory is clean, you can then extract that original backup file that you made. Now when it comes to the database, again, depending on what kind of a hosting setup you use, this may look a little different. You're likely going to have this one database, information schema, but then beyond that, you will have one or more databases that are listed down below. So right here, for example, I only have one because this isn't a shared hosting account that this site is on. So I only have one database, but you could certainly have 10, 20, 30, or even more databases listed here. Each one of these is its own WordPress website. A lot of times though, when you just install WordPress by default, it can be hard to figure out which database goes to which website. One of the easiest ways to find this out, if it's not identifiable in the database name, like a lot of times you just get these WordPress and then a number, and you might have a number of those and it's just hard to tell them apart. Well, if you click on any one of them and go to the WP options table that is within it, you're going to see your site URL located right up at the top in the number 1 and the number 2 option IDs right here. So this is the easy way to verify that you are indeed backing up the correct database. So now I know that this database right here is for this entire website. So I want to navigate back to the top of the database. I want to get out of that options table I was just in. So I'm seeing a complete listing of all the tables now that are within this database. Once I am on this screen, then I can go to the Export tab. In most cases, you can just leave these options as they are, do the quick export, use SQL for the format, and just click on Go. This is going to download a file to your computer now. It is named, as you can see, after this database right here. So I have SpeedySS underscore WordPress 20, just like I have here, to help me identify it. And then the ending of it, .sql, this is the kind of file that it is. So this is a database backup file. So now I can save this file to my computer, and that gives me a complete backup of the entire database. Now ultimately, most of your website content lies within the database. So if there's one of the two kinds of backups that you need to consider to be the most important, it's going to be this database backup. All of the content of your website, all the text that you have put into the WordPress editor to build your website, for example, all that stuff is going to be located in the WP posts table. So if you don't have a backup of this database, you're not going to be able to restore the content on your website. So this is really, really important. Now going back to the top of my database here once again, I want to talk to you about restoring a database backup now. This is done in a very similar manner. We simply navigate to the correct database, and then we just go over here to import. Now once we find this file, that SQL file that we downloaded before, we browse for it on our computer to select it, and then just go down below and click on Go. And it's going to restore all that stuff to our database. But just like with the files on our website, when you are dealing with restoring a database, you need to think about whether there is stuff already there in your database. I already have this whole database intact. So if I were to try to restore my database right now, it wouldn't work. I would end up with errors because it would be trying to put information back into the database that's already present, and it's going to run into a snag by doing so. So if I wanted to restore this entire database backup, I would actually want to not delete my entire database, but I would want to empty it first. If you go to the Operations tab within these listings up here, you can use this particular page to be able to empty these database tables, but unfortunately to do this, you actually would have to select each of these one by one then go to Operations, and all the way down here you have the option to empty the table, truncate. This would clear all the records out of the table, but you would have to go by one and clear every single table in the whole database. So that could be a little time consuming. It's not entirely necessary to do though. You could, if you just wanted to wipe the whole thing out and start over from scratch with your backup, the easiest way is going to be to just click on the database itself to get to your listing of all the tables. Click on the check all box at the bottom, and then you could simply drop these tables. You could empty them this way, but by simply dropping them, and you do have to confirm before it's actually going to do this, so I'm not going to be confirming mine. Once you do this, it'll clear everything that is in that database, but it still leaves the database itself intact. That's what you want to be happening before you would actually try to restore it. So then, once you have an empty database, you could go to Import, find your SQL file, and then upload it. And that's going to restore all of your database tables and also all of the information that was within those tables. Now, one other thing to consider is that you may not actually end up using the same web hosting account, possibly. If your site got hacked and you decided, I'm just going to set up a new web hosting account somewhere and set up my website over there from the backups of it. If that were the case, you would have to manually create this database table or simply set up WordPress and allow it to create the table for you and then wipe everything out and restore from a backup. In most cases though, I don't think the average person ends up trying to move the web host when they have a site hacking. They just simply are interested in getting it clean. So delete all of your tables and restore them by importing that SQL file for the backup. And then the other part of that is wiping out all of your files that are in the base directory of where you installed WordPress. If you only have one site, that would be in the public HTML directory. It's possible though that you could have numerous sites, in which case you would not want to wipe out the entire public HTML directory. That would affect all of your websites, so that's very important. If you had multiple sites within public HTML, you would then have numbers of folders that would each pertain to a particular website. So those folders would be the folders that you would want to be deleting and then restoring the backups to. Now, one final thing worth mentioning before I conclude this class is frequency of your backups. Depending on what you do with your WordPress site, you may not actually have to worry about making backups very often. If you do not update your WordPress site, then ultimately you're not going to need to worry about updating your backups for that WordPress site either. So what I do, if I am building a site and putting content on it, and once I'm finished with that, if I just leave the site alone and don't do anything with it, then once I have finished building the site, I'll make a backup of the files, and then I'll make a backup of the database for it. And then as long as I never go back in and do anything else to that website, those backups will still be valid. I'll still be able to use them to completely restore the site to its current state. The exception to that, though, would be if you are updating your site on some kind of a regular basis. This could be you adding new content. It could be editing existing content that is there. It could be adding new plugins or themes or changing the design of your website. It could even be people leaving comments and things like that on your website. So if you have user engagement going on there, you would need to think about whether they have done anything to cause the website to be different. So if you have anything like that going on, it would cause your website to be changed in the future as opposed to how it is right after you finish building it. That's when you would need to make sure that you are keeping more up-to-date backups. So that is really the case when a more automated solution would be handy for you. However, if you don't update your website, if you just build it and leave it there, which is pretty common with a lot of affiliate type of websites, for example, then build your site, make your backups, file them away for safekeeping, and as long as you don't update those sites, you don't need to worry about any kind of automated backups. Those original ones that you took will be good until you update that website again.